Hi, everyone. So we're going to talk about moon settlements and orbital space settlements. I'm Anezina Solomonidou from the Greek Space Agency. Yes, we have one of those. I'm a planetologist, and I'm very happy to be here. Next to me, actually, I have two great panelists, and I hope we're going to have a very fruitful discussion. So first, we have Athena Coustenis. Athena is a planetologist and a planetary protection specialist. It's a very important job. And one of the leading figures worldwide for planetary exploration. Very importantly, she was my tutor during my PhD, and she's the director of research at CNRS in Paris at the Paris Observatory. She has designed and contributed in a large number of space missions. For instance, the legendary NASA ESA ASI Cassini-Huygens mission that explored Saturn and the sibling of Earth Titan, where the temperature there is minus 180 Celsius. So you would appreciate that, yes, I know. And currently the ESA JUICE mission that it's on its way to the Jupiter system to explore the ocean worlds Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa. Next, we have Nahum. It's great to have an artist in the panel because you just have to mention the first name. So Nahum is an artist, a space philosopher, and musician, and he's based in Berlin. His interdisciplinary work blends space technologies, illusionism, and hypnosis to explore human perception. In 2018, he became the first artist to launch an interactive artwork into outer space. So I'm going to start by saying something that Myrto is not going to love. So that today we meet on the sacred island not only to dream, but also to question. And in space policy, dreams are not neutral. Visions of settlement, as we have recently learned, have diverged dramatically. And the question is, are we exploring space to expand knowledge or to expand power? So let's start by making a vital distinction. On one hand, we have exploration for science, understanding the moon, Mars, the ocean worlds, their origins, geology, astrobiology, potential for life. On the other hand, we have settlements for, I hope, not colonization, but human habitation, projecting influence, claiming territory, repeating old patterns of conquest. Recent events in the US, including policy statements driven by political dominance, deregulation of lunar mining rights, a dramatic and catastrophic for us decrease in public research funding, and of course the militarization of orbit, make this panel more urgent than ever, I think. So we must ask, whose future are we building in space, and at what cost? So before we hear from our exceptional panelists, let us first welcome the new president of the Hellenic Space Center, our national space agency, Dr. Emmanuel Rammos, to open our session with a few remarks.
Thank you, Anezina. I'm glad to be here as well in this marvelous place, thanks to Alexandra. The Hellenic Space Center has been, since the beginning, with the World Human Forum, supporting space, could not be not involved in these discussions about environment and about the future of humanity. Space has been instrumental in understanding the climate change. It has been instrumental in the exploration and understanding our planetary and Earth environment. So, but it has been since the beginning a place of competition as well. You may remember, of course, a competition, a noble competition, I would say, who is going to send the first astronaut, who is going to send the first satellite. but also it has been a place of cooperation as well. For example, you can consider the International Space Station, which is an endeavor of cooperation between several countries, and where astronauts from all over the world, I mean, from many countries of the world, have been going up there. So remember also that sometimes this cooperation is a necessity. Let me remind you that for 10 years, only Soyuz, the Russian launcher, was able to bring astronauts back and forth to the ISS. So let's say this cooperation was imposed. And also cooperation in space increases efficiency of its use. Think, for example, about the need to coordinate frequencies in the various orbits, and this is done in the frame of the United Nations International Telecom Union. Otherwise, no satellites could operate, they would interfere in one another. So, competition and cooperation as well. And now talking about colonization, here, personally, I would like to think a bit about how would it be to live in a confined place in Mars, probably several meters below the Earth to avoid the deadly radiation in space. How long could you survive such an environment? Already we know how difficult it is for those people in the submarines to stay 6 months below the surface, even if they know that they can surface at any moment, which is not going to be the case in Mars. So, well, some years ago there was a discussion in the space news about Earth genesis or planetary genesis. I mean, people were thinking about colonizing planets that could make them friendly to the human race. Now, looking a bit to what happens now on Earth, where we're not even able to make sure that we're going to have a survival of environment even in the very close future. I wonder if we would be able, as humanity, to coordinate how the planetary world would be. So I would rather like to think about Earth regenesis instead of talking about, Earth genesis up there. So nothing should not take more the time of our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, thank you. We're very happy to have Dr. Rammos in the leadership of our space agency. So, Athena, to begin. Robotic missions remain the foundation of space exploration. From a scientific perspective, where are we going next, and what do we still need to learn from our robotic explorers before we talk about building settlements?
Okay, hello everybody. Hello, dear President, ministers, Stamati, with whom we worked together on the Cassini-Huygens mission you mentioned before, Kostas, Lakis, everybody. We have friends here, we have astronauts, we have planetologists. Please, all of you, take a sip of water. Now, tilt your hat in the right direction to avoid getting burned or having, little nudges here on your. Thank you very much. Yes, Greeks always know what to do. Because, please do this, because our sun is our source of energy, right? And be thankful, because our sun here today at the most is going to cause you to faint, okay? But if you were without the sun, out in the cold, in the snow, right, you'd be dead. So thank you, sun, okay, that is there. Thank you, water. It's one of the essential elements that we have for life. And then thank you for the food. We're going to get at the dinner time later on. Hopefully not much later on, because the food is essential. So when people were discussing before, in architecture, I was wondering, do they all know what we need? The basic things that we need. Okay, when the conquistadors went to the Americas, right? And they thought they were going to bring them civilization and religion and all of that. You know what they managed to do to the Incas and the Mayas in the 16th and 17th? they destroyed them with sicknesses. They brought smallpox. They brought diphtheria. And that is what we risk ourselves to do. If we go out there exploring, because our planet is unique, we all agree, yeah, we love it. We love to be here. But if we go exploring out there without taking precautions, the bacteria that you heard in the previous panel are going to destroy any hope we have to ever find traces of life elsewhere. And when I say traces of life, they're also going to destroy possibly every chance we have to better understand our own planet and how our solar system came together. Because if we destroy that evidence out there by contaminating everything that we take with us, we think our life is great. Yeah, let's take it out there, right? And then see what happens to the people there. And then you bring back samples, right? Alien samples. What happened with COVID here, right? Did we know how to tackle COVID? I heard at the beginning, oh, it's nothing. It's going to go away, very soon now. We don't know. That's the planetary protection that we're talking about. Planetary protection is protecting the environments we go to explore and the things we bring back. And planetary protection is protecting you guys, the ones that are left here, still sitting in the sun, still thinking, when is this going to end? And we can go get some water somewhere else and find a shadow. And I promise you, next time I'm going to bring umbrellas and stick them on the ground and we can all lie down, like an immersive session. But I'm telling you what planetary protection is. Planetary protection is having respect, both for the planets where you go out there and explore them, and for our own planet, right? Coming back, what you bring back here goes through a whole protocol of clean, installations, of facilities. You use all kinds of gloves and everything, but you still want to see if there is some kind of living organism in there, right? So you take all the precautions you can so that you don't destroy our Earth. So that's step one. We're studying those planets. Step two is we go there and explore with humans. And I will never say colonization because I read the history about the Incas and the Mayas and all of that. We do not colonize space. We use space. So in the course of our panel, we're only 2 and 3 with Emmanouel Rammos. We're going to try and bring back some people also to talk to you about resources and to talk about what we need to make settlements in space. Because we talked about handicapped people, and I can tell you ESA also in the last call for astronauts called for people with disabilities, and there were some chosen, and they're very, very well suited for this kind of work. And I can tell you, when I had a broken leg and I went to Rome, I so wish they had more sidewalks that I could go through. Rome is an impossible city if you're handicapped. So we're going to go from robotic exploration to acquiring some in situ knowledge with robots and human beings, and then go to settlements, because that's the same thing you do on Earth. Why do you build cities next to a river? Why do you build the cities at all? It's because it brings something to humanity. So, Anezina, I won't go into the missions now. I want to hear from Nahum, but then we're going to discuss all these different topics one by one.
So Athena set the scene, so now we know what to expect. And I want to ask Nahum about exploration versus human habitation. Nahum, in the language of today's superpowers, space settlement, right, often echoes conquest.
Yeah.
How can artists and thinkers help us decolonize the cosmos?
So to start with, I was born in the belly button of the moon, and that's the meaning of the word Mexico. My ancestors, they built pyramids that spoke to the stars. They laid out cities that were in a dialogue with the cosmos, where serpents made of shadows descended during the equinox. And these cultures were violently stopped thanks to a process that we know as colonization. And today we imagine the future under the same paradigm that caused so much pain and suffering to our ancestors. So we might say, well, if we are talking about the moon, an asteroid, or Mars, there are no people. But my job as an artist is to also examine the language and the culture it carries. And we know that language is two things. It's a means of communication, but also it's a carrier of culture. So what culture we are taking into space? Is it the culture of exploitation, colonization, or are we doing something else? And this something else is an act of imagination that we need today. Also, as an artist, I can say that the imaginaries of space often start with the arts. Let's just remember that before technology and science were able to even dream of going to space, artists, writers were already depicting our journey throughout the cosmos. And those new imaginaries are being created that are beyond the copy-paste of the paradigms and systems that we have on Earth into the cosmos, such as land, nations, our economic model. We can do better than this. So this is what artists are still creating. Also, we do another thing. We are provocateurs. We challenge ideas, no, and we ask difficult questions. And one question is: are we really that special as a species? If what we have done to this planet is a blueprint of what humans can do to a celestial body, maybe we need a candid conversation and go back to the drawing board so we can really think how we belong to this universe and not how it can belong to us. So that's regarding the topic of expansionism, no? Where it comes from. The concept of dominion, which is perhaps one of the most dangerous legacies of imperial Christianity, the dominion of humans over the rest of creation, the dominion of men over women, of humans over plants and animals, and eventually over planets and the universe. Now, space activities to learn about the universe, to understand our place, absolutely yes, if we're able to do it without causing further ecological damage and to do it without violence. I am for that.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I want to follow up on this and ask Athena. We've seen Trump-era rhetoric revive Cold War thinking around winning the moon. What's your response to this actually nationalistic framing for outer space?
Yeah, I wanted to say that, I don't know if this works. Generally in the panel, there's a little bit of fight, but I agree completely. We agree completely so far with Nahum. Maybe we'll find something to argue about later on. But the truth is, there is something that people, I don't know if, who knows in this audience about the Outer Space Treaty? Okay, the usual suspects. All right, so there is a treaty that has been ratified by 120 nations that say you cannot bring weapons, on the moon. You cannot cause war. This is what you can do. This is what you cannot do. And then you have people, and I'm sorry, it's not just Trump. It's Trump and his council, and I hate mentioning his name, but Elon, you know whom I mean, right? Okay. They have been in the space business for so long, you would think that they know about the Outer Space Treaty. And every word they put out there, or at least 1 out of 2, is something showing complete ignorance of exactly what do you, can you put a McDonald's on the moon? Yes. Yes, if you bring it peacefully and you build it there and you bring the food, you can put a McDonald's on the moon, says the Outer Space Treaty. But you cannot bring a weapon, and you cannot bring contamination, and you cannot do this and that. You cannot cause war. And the whole outer space that the word diastema in Greek has many meanings. Diastema is also for, time. Diastema is how much I count from here to there, and diastema is up there. So it has many words. But Horos is really, the place where you are, okay? And Uranos is out there. But outer space is used by the space agencies in so many different ways. But it's actually everything that lifts off from here. And every country that launches a space mission is responsible for what that space mission carries, which means that when a mission like Bereshit crashed on the moon with tardigrades on board, if you don't know what tardigrades are, they're really mean little bastards. And they are awful. They replicate and they contaminate everything. It's worse than any kind of bacteria you've seen. And the United States say, oh, we didn't know about it. It's difficult to understand. And when Elon Musk says, I'm going to put 1 million people on Mars in the next decade, when we know that that's not easy because an astronaut is not somebody who can train for this trip to Mars and come back and do all the work there in such a short time. And in fact, Anezina, if you allow me, we have an astronaut here in the audience. I don't know if Adrianos is there. Where is he? Yes. Can you get a microphone, Adrianos? It's our Greek astronaut. And maybe you can say a few words about how easy it is or not for an astronaut.
Definitely easier than putting me on the spot, but thank you.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Indeed, I've had the privilege of working with astronauts for about 10 years now, and with the help of the Greek Space Agency, I'm close to becoming one myself. So I'll tell you just my point of view. It's interesting, but I think astronauts are actually tools. They are tools of their country or of their continent or of humanity eventually. And what does this tool do? I would say, you know the stories. If you go to space, you need to do a couple of hours of exercise every day just to maintain your muscle, since there is no gravity, right? So that's one thing astronauts do. And if you brushed your teeth this morning, that's also one thing that astronauts do. However, the astronauts, they need to swallow the toothpaste because there is no sink to drain the water on the space station. But to the point of the question, I think astronauts mainly are a tool for science. So they are enablers. And, why do we go in space? We go to space to do science that we cannot do on the Earth, right? We want to do physics and chemistry and human biology without gravity to understand more and benefit on our planet. It's actually science in space, but for Earth. I'm sure there were speakers that put it in better words than me, how important Earth is and why we do need to continue on that. By the way, I think in the last 25 years that we have permanent human presence in space in the International Space Station, we've had 2,000 scientific articles being published. That's quite some science being done. But I think here in Delos, of all places, we need to allow ourselves to entertain another element. And that element is, of course, linked to humanity. And if you ask astronauts, they offer us a different perspective that is outside of our planet, right? So seeing the planet as a whole from up there are no borders, just the borders that we keep in our heads. And I think if you ask astronauts, they will tell you that there is no noble goal that we cannot attain so long as we work together. And that may sound very romantic, but I found it to be true. So Athena, if you ask me what's an astronaut, I would say that here in Delos, at least, contemplating, an astronaut is a tool and an enabler for science and for community in the broader sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrianos. That's exactly right.
I'll leave the mic here for the next speaker.
No, but when somebody says, I'm going to send 1 million people on Mars from one day to the next, that person is quite off reality.
So I didn't want to go there just yet, but I want to ask Dr. Rammos something that it's a question that's really close to my heart. So we have here a conglomerate of people, Minister Papasteriou, the General Secretary Karangelos, Spiros Vasilakos, who is the brand new director of the National Observatory of Athens, and of course you, that you are working towards finding some space for space in Greece. So I want to ask you, what is your vision? What do you think about the involvement of Greeks in the space exploration, human space flight with Adrianos? Just give me your thoughts.
Thank you. So human exploration is not only flying astronauts, you know. There are experiments done in the space station, experiments that could be very well built by Greek scientists. There is a lot of science in analyzing the data coming from up there. You know, of course, that an astronaut is a tool, as Adrianos said, for science, but it is a very expensive tool. So I don't know if I will be able to convince any, the ministers here to put the necessary funding on the table for that. But again, there are a lot of things to do in the space exploration area, and with your help, you are a staff member of the Hellenic Space Center, and with Athena, who is in the board of our Hellenic Space Center, we will try to do our best in order to exploit the best, in a most effective way, the limited resources that we have.
But we bring a lot. Astronauts bring a lot. It's maybe an expensive tool, but the motivation and imagination that they bring forward, both for art and for the younger kids that I see back there, the younger generation who gets so inspired, by astronauts. And I'm sure if I ask all of you here today, at least half of you would have liked to be an astronaut when they were young. I would have liked to be an astronaut when I was young. I didn't manage that. I became an astronomer. But it's also the inspiration, and it's also the image of a country.
Exactly. So let's move on discussing the risk of destroying pristine environments. The beginning is a bit dark, but we go into better places. So let me ask first Athena for the scientific part. You've spoken often of icy moons as pristine laboratories, places with rigid icy surfaces where they hold a secret ocean underneath, and we expect they have high potential for life. What dangers of fast-paced commercial activities pose to these untouched places, and even the moon, for instance?
Yeah, I'm not special to talk about commercial, but I think with Nahum here we can bring some imagination forward. These are, the icy moons of the giant planets. You've heard about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, right? And they have satellites, like we have our own moon, right, that we'll see tonight. And those satellites, we thought for such a long time that were a waste of space, if I can say. And we have discovered that they have huge liquid water oceans underneath their surfaces. So you have the water there. In many cases, you have organics, which is the food that we use to survive. And the energy sources there are obviously, because they're very far away, it's not always the sun. It can be a chemical energy, it can be tidal effects, right? And so we have discovered these new places. And can you all imagine yourselves one day living underneath the surface, inside a liquid water ocean? Stephen Hawking, whom you may have heard of, the great astrophysicist, has something on YouTube. You can find it. He imagines the life in those liquid undersurface oceans, these little, like octopuses, that go around with big eyes. We would have to adapt. That's an understatement. We would have to adapt to live underneath the surface. But there are ways of extracting the water and so on, and then building maybe a habitat. The problem is, if we go there, as I said before, if we go to Mars, if we go to these moons, if we go to any place in the solar system and bring our own contamination, our own living organisms, then you've lost the pristine environments. You've lost any original information you can get. But it would be wonderful to have, like, an artist's impression of how you would imagine life in kind of words like that.
Okay, well, you're putting me on the spot and out of the script. Um, I would say that it starts with stories, right? Right now, our stories are only about humans dealing with humans, about human issues. If we look at again, I go back to the past in order to go to the future. If we look at indigenous literature, their stories were about them and the people tree and the people lake, and they were in a constant conversation with the world. The moment that the West divided the world into objects and subjects, no, where a subject acts, has desires, where an object is there to be used and abused. And again, going back to religion, in the Genesis, clearly the creation was there to serve humans, and the pagan traditions of Europe and in many other places in the world, where we were in this constant dialogue with a modern human world, disappeared. So today we have forgotten this. No, the Navajo people, they used to say that the sun is a father, no, or Artemis, no, the goddess of the realm of the moon. So we stopped having this conversation. So first step would be to restore this world and others. Think of Stanislav Lem, Solaris. What a beautiful idea that a planet is something more than a rock. It's a psychological entity that is able to connect with your mind and manifest your fears. What, as the philosopher David Abram recently wrote, that perhaps we have failed to understand consciousness because we've been looking inside. But what if consciousness is something outside of us? If we look at the etymology of a lot of words like atmos, spiritus, you will see that the distinction between air, wind, spirit, mind was none. It was integrated into one thing. So what if our consciousness is just a situated, located manifestation of the atmosphere of this planet? So I think coming up with these new ways of engaging with a planet, a future planet, will pave the way for us to at least being more respectful and to treat a planet like a subject and not an object.
Now, in this framework, do you think that the moon should be a protected site, like a heritage site?
Well, there are two different questions here. The first one is, does a rock have any rights? Imagine that one day you look at the moon and it has a dent, as if it were bitten like an apple, no? And this might be one day true, as companies in Luxembourg are rolling out the spreadsheets and making the calculations to see how to make a profit out of the so-called space resources. The reality is that space is not a resource, neither our planet is. We are part of this planet, and we are part of the cosmos. So again, it should have a right, because it is what it is. It belongs to itself, and everything belongs to each other. And then second, which is more the cultural heritage and the Apollo sites, there are sculptures on the moon. There is ashes of a scientist that was buried on the moon, and copies of the Bible and so on. I guess to certain extent, no, it's part of our history, and we learn from it. We learned that 12 men walked on the moon, and that says a lot about a culture that went to the moon that didn't allow women to walk on the moon yet. So yes, we should preserve the subject so we can understand our own cultural processes and understandings at a given age.
I really like this answer. Thank you.
It's great that Nahum brought up the question of resources. Just to elaborate on what they're doing in Luxembourg and in other places, they're thinking of ways for extracting some of the resources on site, the material like oxygen, metal, and things like that, in order to build bases, for instance, and sustain astronauts and other kind of settlements, because we're discussing about settlements, right? And settlements on the moon today are like the Moon Village Association actually has become, but it's not just the moon, as you say, finding a dent. It can also happen for asteroids, and I think we have an expert here that I'm going to put again on the spot. I'm going to be killed at the end of this panel. Is Antonella Barucci here? Yes, okay. You were hiding in the shade, but we brought you out. Antonella is a specialist. She's building space missions for the asteroids and for Martian moons. And she can say something perhaps about in terms of resources, is that useful to go and spoil those environments and get resources?
Kalispera.
Good.
So I'm working on asteroids, and there are many industries, especially in the United States, that want to have mining from asteroids. Asteroids, I don't know if you know what they are, but they are small planets. They are not just a rock. They are small planets that are the most between Mars and Jupiter, and many are very close to the Earth. But these small planets are just some small bodies that were not able to build a planet. So they still have the same composition like our planet, all the other planets, but they are small, so they have not evolved. And so you can find many important material, and something that is very important, you can find water and organics, because these bodies has probably bring the life on the Earth. We don't know in which way the life came on the Earth, but probably asteroids had the big collision once, long time ago, dinosaurs disappeared, and then the small by small life came, and we are here all together. So many people now think about mining asteroids, because asteroids can contain a lot of minerals, very important minerals, that we don't have anymore on the Earth. So this is a big discussion, what to do, what not to do. I think that for the moment we still have to understand what these bodies are, so it's important for science. But why not? We had already some missions that go there, bring material back. We found a lot of organics, a lot of very rare material that we didn't have on Earth. So we know that these are very particular objects, can allow a lot to understand a lot of our solar system, also a lot on the life on the Earth, but we can have so many different compositions, because these bodies come from different composition. If you know the objects that are more metallic or more solid are near the sun, all the others that are more icy are far away. So the composition is, there is a huge different composition. So in this body, you can have a lot of different materials. So we think that you can mining on asteroids, you can have some iridium, some very precious metallic, rare earth on these bodies, but essentially you can have water. So one of the theories is also to use these objects, like to have emissions, for example, to go there, to take material that is easy to bring for space mission, like a station. So you can use like stop and take some hydrogen, oxygen, or some other material. Anyway, this is our future. We have to continue to think about, because I think Earth probably one day will not be enough for all the population. And so I think we can use not only for science, but we can use also for improve our life.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Antonella. So if we are able to mine these resources and we are able to build settlements and everything, I want to ask Nahum. Of course, as Athena said, the idea is there, the Isa Moon village. And actually, we have here Yannis Zouganelis from ISA, who will talk to us later about ISA. So I want to go to ask you actually about the possible new societies. Since we are starting from scratch, in a sense, should we embed poetry, memory, and ritual from day one?
Yeah, I think sometimes I like to think of an opportunity that space can give us is to see it as a blank canvas, where we can draw from scratch the new ideas, models, paradigms, in order to coexist with each other and planetary and celestial bodies and so on. I think it's tragic and to some extent shameful, where we imagine the future as the mistakes that we are making on Earth. So thinking of the new space economy as an extension of the capitalist economy, I think is a missed opportunity. If we think of space, as Athena mentioned, as something there to be grabbed and exploited in terms of resources. No, the U.S. has passed a law that allows their citizens and private companies to profit from space, in contradiction with the space treaties. So if we're able to think of new ways, like why do we have to go to the moon and own land? Why we cannot think of another scheme? I don't know, authorship. Maybe, there's a kind of protection for the things that you author on the surface of the moon, but owning a piece of moon, it sounds immoral to my view. We own Earth, right? We buy properties, and I mean we should start questioning those things. And I think the beautiful opportunity is that this black canvas, can allow us to experiment, to be playful, having learned from the things that we have done on this planet. So later we can do a kind of a moon-bounce experiment where the new systems and models that we create outside or beyond this planet can be then used on our planet to solve some of the most pressing issues that we have.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really great.
Thank you.
Dr. Rammos, you are a physicist and an Earth observation person, so you know Earth really well. Do we settle space because we're failing here on Earth? What do you think?
Well, I'm a SATCOMS expert to start with. I know a bit about Earth observation, but I'm not I'm not really an expert in that. So before I answer to your question, I just wanted to add something about owning space, or, that around the Earth there is, thank you, contamination.
Yes, exactly.
So around the Earth there is a unique orbit, the geostationary orbit, which is very precious to everybody, to a lot of people. Now, there is a possibility for any country to put satellites in special position in this orbit by doing a filing of in the ITU, in the International Telecom Union. Now, people think now that, okay, we're making a filing, and then we own that position in the orbit. But this is not true. It's fact. Nobody can own this place. It's shared for a moment as far as you have the satellites there. If the satellites that you have placed there go out of orbit, then it's back to use to anyone that has. So therefore, it's not owning there. And to make, you mentioned about the law of Luxembourg or United States, unless if I missed some recent laws, there is no definition legally of space. If you ask anyone in the space business where space starts, they will tell you around 100 kilometers we're in space. But legally, there is no definition of when space starts. Just to tell you how difficult this, the legal aspects of space, law, owning, not owning, and then I forgot the question you asked.
I just ask if we settle space because we're failing here on Earth, or we just expanding.
Yeah. Well, expansion is always in the mind of the people that they want to go to space. But yeah, failing on Earth. Well, I'm not so sure that we are not failing actually. If we see what happens with the temperature rising and us not, I mean, the human people not being able to put an end to this trajectory. So, but as I told you before, I mean, I wouldn't like to live in a remote planet far from my own Earth here. In fact, you talked about Cassini before. There is a marvelous photo coming from Cassini, the spacecraft. It's a marvelous photo that shows the giant planet Saturn and his marvelous rings all around. And somewhere on the background there's a dot, tiny dot, Earth. So, which is our home. It's a lesson of humility for whoever thinks that he's someone that is going to occupy space. So, show him this photograph and tell him, you are a small piece of that tiny dot there. So let's try to preserve this dot, as we were saying, instead of doing big dreams of colonizing everybody. Exploring, yes. But that's my personal view. So, I don't know if I answered you.
Yeah.
You did actually, and thank you for bringing up this amazing photo by Cassini. Athena, what can we tell from planetary science about the long-term habitability here on Earth?
Yes, and I just wanted to mention the United Nations and the Outer Space Treaty have the first article is non-appropriation of space. So nobody can appropriate space out there. And as I'm told, my vice chair, who's a lawyer in the panel. The thing is, this little blue dot that actually, I think it's Carl Sagan, right, who identified it as small, and we had wonderful conversations with Carl Sagan because we both loved one of the satellites, Titan, around Saturn, the only place in the solar system that has an atmosphere like the Earth and organics and lakes and seas and things that resemble our planet. Anyway, when you look at some things out there in space, you learn a lot of things. If you look at Venus, people are thinking, oh, Venus is a sister planet. Venus is 480 degrees Celsius, and it's boiling, and it is toxic, and it's a disaster, an environmental disaster. And we know how it got there. It got there through a runaway greenhouse effect. And people have already talked in our panel about what will happen if you continue to burn, some of the things that we have on Earth, the fossils and so on, and if we bring aerosols in the atmosphere and we destroy this atmosphere that is protecting us, right? So we know what happened on Venus. It's a disaster. What happened on Mars is also a disaster because also Mars had water and an atmosphere in the past, and all that went away because it didn't have the protection of a magnetic field that we have here from the solar wind that just takes everything away. Recent measurements from the MAVEN mission showed how Mars became the desert that we see today. But Mars could perhaps, I heard yesterday, I think it was from Mark Quigley, that, maybe life came from another planet. Okay, it didn't come from Venus. But and Venus, by the way, has clouds, but I don't think there's life in those clouds. People have claimed given the temperature and so on. But if life originated on Mars, it's not only that it may have been brought here. The essential element for me is to discover that life emerged in two different planets in the solar system. That multiplies the possibility for the exoplanetary systems to possess planets that may harbor life by a lot. If in our solar system we have seen life emerging in two different planets. And so when we do climate change and when we look these things with Kostas Sirolakis, who's an expert, and the Earth observations that we do, we don't just look out there, we look also back to our planet. And it works both ways. Planets tell us about us, and we tell those planets what we discovered from the Earth. I work with oceanographers, here on Earth. And we don't know what's in the oceans, right? There are a lot of things in the Earth oceans we don't know about. So the small blue dot is our planet A. And I know everybody has said it, it's a cliche. There's no planet B like Earth. We start from protecting here, and then we expand. It's not because we're failing, it's because we don't understand. And the people in the United States, I'm sorry, do not all understand the risk and the danger.
And expansion means that we don't need to understand everything, because here we have defined life as something very specific. But in astrobiology, in planetary exploration, we're looking also for life as we don't know it. You don't have to breathe oxygen and drink water. You can maybe have another drink of a different element and material. But yeah, thank you, Athena. I want to ask Nahum. You know, there's these ideas about orbital cities where we can escape the climate crisis and just avoid, you know, the problem. If we just flee Earth's problems, do you think that we are doomed to repeating them?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that we need to stop this illusion that escaping Earth will solve our problems, and second, that going to space is going to make people nice and all that. I think that if you have to go to another planet, terraform it, live with oxygen tanks, and live in such harsh, horrible circumstances, maybe that place is not for us. Like as simply as that. No, so a lot is being said about the overview effect, about how that can bring us a unified, beautiful vision of space. But I will challenge that, and this is something I told Frank White, the person who coined the term in a panel like this, and I said, well, what if we, like in order to take all the politicians and all the CEOs to space, I mean, that will create an ecological disaster in the upper layers of the atmosphere, so it's not an option. But instead, what if we develop a ground view effect? And perhaps that could be an experience of appreciation that we live in an incredible planet, in an incredible solar system, universe, galaxy, cosmos, by just observing, a sunset, the phases of the moon, because at the end of the day, we are in space and we're in the most beautiful places in space. And just a quick story, like in the 70s, there was an anthropologist visiting Alaska, and he was with the Inuits. And he was telling them, like we've sent men to the moon, and was telling everything about Aldrin and Armstrong, and they were laughing. They were like, haha, so you just went now? I was like, yes, no, there are men on the moon. And they said, well, we've been going there for years. So yeah, I will just close with that.
I would like to talk about the Greek poet Cavafy, he wrote a marvelous poem called The City, Polis, talking about someone that, had destroyed his life. I mean, he failed in the city where he was, and then he wanted to go to another city in order to reach success. And the poem ends by saying, well, just not translating even, but I remember that it was saying, if you destroyed your life in your city, you are not going to find another city for you. So it's like, if we destroy life in our planet, we're not going to find the planet B, at least not close to us enough, or in space or in time, so that we can have a planet B. So.
Thank you. So we are on time. And just a few closing remarks. From mythic Delos to the moon and, of course, beyond, we have explored not only the technical challenges of planetary and space exploration, but also the cultural, ethical, and environmental stakes. So it's really important when we think about space. It's not just about propulsion and engineering, but it's also about values and about choices. So this conversation actually doesn't end here. Next year, in our sixth Delos Global Gathering, our collective focus will turn even more deeply to space, asking new pressing questions. For instance, what does it truly mean for humans to live in space, not just survive, but actually live? So, but until next year, let's all take a moment to appreciate and thank our amazing panelists for their valuable insights and, of course, for helping us ask better questions about the work we are shaping beyond Earth. Thank you.
Thank you.